Thank you, Betty. You boys are standing. I saved a few seats for you right here if you want to come up in front. I don't want you to miss anything. I'm Jack M., an alcoholic. My wife is Mrs. Murray. I haven't said that, but Johnny asked me to say it tonight. I live in Leisure World, Seal Beach. That's the home for retarded people. Everybody there works the program a day at a time. We get up in the morning, read the obituary column. Name isn't there, why we say grateful for another day. I read someplace just recently, it said if you go through a day without laughter, you really had a lousy day, and that's the reason I try to get a few smiles. I'm just a garden variety of drunk, and so if I can get you to smile, maybe, why, you'll forget how lousy my talk was. But when Frank asked me to talk, I told him I'd give my humility talk, but I hadn't been down here for so long, and I didn't realize it was such a small room. But anyway, I'll get it. Oh, I forgot about this. Not really thirsty, but all the better drinkers, better speakers always do this. No, I'll get on with it. As I say, you want to go by that clock? Do you say Mass or anything afterwards? We'll go by that clock up there. That's 5 minutes past. If I don't... Anyway, I'll start at the beginning. And one thing about where I live, another thing I forgot to mention. When you move in there, there's 3 things happen to you. One of them is loss of memory. I don't remember what the hell the other 2 were, but... Well, I'll start at the beginning now. I was born in a small town in Ohio. As a matter of fact, it was so small, they only had one hooker. She was a virgin. Didn't have a town drunk, they just took turns, you know. No, seriously, my father ran a small hotel, restaurant, and a saloon. Not a cocktail lounge, a saloon. And so I learned all the facts of life very early. We had penny... Am I through already? There was plenty of booze around, and I had 2 older brothers, and none of us ever drank because, well, I mean, it was there, and nobody said we couldn't, and so we didn't drink. As a matter of fact, Prohibition came along, and the government said you can't drink, and everybody in the country started to drink. Oh, by the way, I wasn't always this old. I want to tell you that. Although I didn't drink, as I said, my father ran a hotel, and my father passed away when I was in high school, and so we moved to another town in Ohio, and when I graduated from high school, I had to go to work. Believe it or not, I played basketball. I probably couldn't carry the scorecard now, but I played basketball and I didn't drink. I didn't drink in high school, and I didn't drink in college. As a matter of fact, I never went to college, but then I was thinking about the medical, Bill was talking about the medical men. I remember they used to have, we call them street fakers, you know. This is a long time ago, and they used to have a jar of alcohol, and they would drop a worm in there, and the damn thing would shrivel up, and I learned something very early. You drink alcohol, you won't have worms. That's But anyway, I didn't drink until I went to work, and eventually they started to make bootleg booze, and I was acquainted with the sheriff, and whenever he would get a raid someplace and get a good supply, he used to call several of us up, and I went up to the sheriff's office, and we drank this whiskey. Never got in any trouble because of drinking. It wasn't too bad anyway. 1925, I moved to Chicago. You probably wonder how they call me Chicago Jack. My name is Jack Murray. We used to have a guy called Jack Muty. So he was from Winnipeg, so they called him Canadian Jack and me Chicago Jack. He passed away at the Miami Convention, but the name still goes with me. Doesn't matter. Although you probably hear that name all over the world. We got married in 1927 in Chicago, and this is my first wife. That's 55 years ago. And anyway, we had, at that time they had bathtub gin, and I'm sure none of you remember that, but Saturday night parties, and that's about the only time we drink because the Great Depression came on, although that was in the roaring 20s, as they call it in Chicago, and everything went. But I didn't drink too much at that time. As I say, everybody got drunk, and it was no big deal because everybody got drunk at that time. During the Depression, I got a job selling major appliances for Commonwealth Edison Company. That's a big utility in Chicago. And eventually I got to the downtown store, and we handled all major appliances, all makes, you name it, we had it. So all the manufacturers' men would try to wine and dine us. So I drank a lot of free booze all the time, at least one banquet every week, and I got drunk, and a lot of my story now is hearsay from here on in because eventually I got to be a blackout drinker. We lived about 45 miles south of the loop, and I used to ride the train into the city every day. And one funny thing, if there is anything funny about drinking, during the rush hour, there's a train goes out of Randolph Street about every 60 seconds. But when I would come home at 2 o'clock in the morning, if it was that day to come home, they ran every hour and made every stop. So I live in a town called Flossmoor. And I'd get on this train, get the Chicago Tribune. Everybody bought the Chicago Tribune the night before. And you get on there and read the paper and ride home. But of course, I'd get on, start to read the paper, and we'd get almost to Flossmoor, and I'd go to sleep. Next thing I knew, we'd be at the end of the line, and the conductor would come through. Where you going? I'd say Flossmoor, and he'd say, well, stay on. We'll stop there on the way back. So I stay awake till we got almost to Flossmoor. End up down Randolph Street again. I used to ride this train all night. Eventually I'd get home sometime daybreak, and my wife said, "Where you been?" She said, "Now, what the hell are you going to tell her? You've been riding the IC all night?" No, you tell some lie. As I say, I was a blackout drinker, so if you're a blackout drinker, you have to lie. You can't get away from it. And of course, if you lie, you're going to get caught up with, and you just lie and lie, and you're always behind the eight ball because you can't win. If you think you're right, even if you're right, see, they say you've been drinking, you lost. But anyway, I drank that way, and as I say, this blackout drinking, I used to have to drive to the station, park the car, and I'd get up in the morning after one of these or whenever, and I'd look out the window to see if my car was there, and if it was in the driveway, because I never pull it in the garage when I'd been drinking. I'm just lucky to make it. I lived across from the golf course, and I'd pull this car in the driveway, and I'd get out and look out the window to see if the car was there. And if it was there, I wouldn't rush into this. I mean, you don't do anything. You nonchalantly go out and circle the car to see if the fenders are all there and there's blood. And if it wasn't there, then you wonder where in the hell it was, and you start answering. And again, you don't say you don't know anything. You'd go in a place, or I did, and say, "I was in here, wasn't I?" And say, "Yeah, you were here." And I bad shape? "No, you were having a ball." So that's the way I knew I was always having a ball when I drank. But but I drank this way, and one time, I don't know if you're familiar with the Chicago area, but Calumet City is on the line between Illinois and Indiana. And Chicago, at that time, the bars closed at 12 o'clock, or 2 o'clock. And all the better drinkers would go to Calumet City because the action just started at Calumet City. By the way, I drank every place, but I was strictly a bar drinker, really. I rarely got drunk at home. I never bought half pints, as you hear around, or anything like that, or I never hid bottles that I remember. But if I started to drink at home, I usually used some excuse to get out the bar. But I would go to Calumet City, and as I say, that's where all the action was, because any of you are familiar, Calumet City had a strip a couple of miles long with a bar at every door on both sides of the street. And they were, as I say, the action started at 2 o'clock and ran. But after about 3 days there, I finally got home. Between there and the Loop, drunk, sober, and I finally got home. I always, no matter how much they hunted me, it seemed like I always got home by myself. No one could ever find me. But I got home, and I was feeling no pain, and I'd run out of lies, and I'd run out of excuses. And believe it or not, I think that's the way that 90% of the people get to Alcoholics Anonymous. At least that's been my observation. If they got another damn excuse or another lie, they won't come here. At least I wouldn't. I give it the old college try. Hell, I didn't come here to. But anyway, I was sitting there, and there happened to be a Episcopalian minister, priest, whatever you. He was a Navy chaplain, or former Navy chaplain, and he came over and he told me about a fellow that used to drink a lot and was now sober, and maybe I'd like to talk to him. As I say, I had no more excuses, and I couldn't think of anything else. I said, sure. So this fellow came over, and turned out he was a federal prosecutor. And he sat down and he talked to me for an hour and a half or so, told me all about how he had to drink a quart, there weren't too many fifths in those days, of booze before he prosecuted these guys for bootlegging. He later became a judge, and I brought out the fact that he talked to me for an hour and a half because I don't want to forget it. Because after he talked to me, I walked down to the car, and his wife was sitting in the car with all the luggage in there, and they were on to start their vacation, and she sat there while he came and talked to me for an hour and a half. So I always want to remember that, because anytime I'm too busy or got someplace to go, I don't want to forget how the guy put it all aside for me. But anyway, in the talk, he told me about these fellas over in the next town that were staying sober, and I don't recall if he ever mentioned Alcoholics Anonymous or not. But he told me about these fellows that were staying sober, and he said, if you'd like to come over and sit in, why, be glad to have you, and if you like it, you can stay, and if you don't like it, you can go out and get drunk. I mean, they have no quarrel with people who want to drink. The only people who want to stay sober that they're interested in. So I said, all right. Well, they only had one meeting, and it was on Friday night. He said, I'll come by, but he was on his vacation, so he didn't show up the first Friday, but I didn't drink. But the following Friday, he came. Now, he was not anonymous. If he had been, why, of course, he couldn't have called on me, because I found out later, almost every town, this was a small community, about everybody in town knew that Les was on the program. But he says, I thought maybe you'd go to the meeting by yourself. Well, no way I could have gone, because I say he was not anonymous. But this meeting was surely as hell anonymous, because although they met underneath a real estate office, and it had a front entrance. They met downstairs, but we didn't go in that way. We went around the side of a building, down an alley, through a backyard, and down some steps, and knocked on the door. And that's the way we got to the meeting. So the meeting was anonymous. And I went to this meeting, and it was a small meeting. I know, 15, 20. It seemed like they knew I was coming, because they didn't ask me if I was an alcoholic. As a matter of fact, they didn't ask me anything. They knew I was coming. As I say, I'm sure they did. And everybody at this meeting talked. That is, they passed it around. As I say, about 20 people there. So we sat there, and this guy, I called him my sponsor. I thought your sponsor was the guy who brought you to the meeting. I didn't know him better. But I called him my sponsor, and they passed it around. Everybody talked until he got to me, and he said, you pass. And I said, I pass. So there wasn't another meeting for a week, but in the meantime, several of these people happened to be going by where I lived. They just happened to be going by there, although it was hell, they couldn't have got over there unless they took two. But they happened to drop in just to say hello, because they had heard about me. But we went back to the next meeting, the same deal. Passed around, came to me, says, you pass. I pass. After the meeting, I said, how come I always pass? And he said, well, you don't know anything about staying sober, do you? I said, no. He said, these guys know everything there is to know about drinking, so you haven't got a hell of a lot to tell them, have you? And I said, no, guess you're right. So he said, you stay sober, you don't drink for 30 days, and then when they call on you, you tell them how you stayed sober for 30 days. Never try to tell them anything that you don't know yourself or have observed. That's what I'm trying to do now. So I'll tell you the way it worked for me, and may seem awfully dull for you. I don't know anything about drugs. I don't know anything about funny cigarettes. I don't know anything about narcotics. They weren't in style at the time I was drinking. I probably would have had them. I have no quarrel with them, but I don't know anything about them. All I know is alcohol. And I know that, anyway, so they went on talking, as I say, after they, 2 or 3 meetings, and I heard all this stuff about love and resentments and higher power, and getting kind of boring. And I finally asked him, I said, this is interesting, but how do you fellows stay sober? And they looked at me like I was nuts, They said, we don't drink. And I said, well, I'll be damned. I had never thought of this, see? So then I got to thinking a little more after another few meetings, and I said, yeah, but how do you keep from drinking? And that's when they started to tell me all these few things that I'll tell you. I mean, it worked for me. They really didn't tell me to do anything. I say that, but as time goes on, they all say, as I recall, they say, this is the way we did it, or this is the way that it was told by us that other people did it, but I can't recall, as I say, I used to say, they told me to do this, they told me to do that. They really didn't. They said, this is, by our observation, this is the way it works, and this is the way it worked for me, this is the way it worked for the other people. We suggest maybe it might work for you. And so they told me about the steps, and that way I got into that, and they told me about the steps. Well, I'd already taken the first step, I believe. I was powerless. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, that my life was unmanageable. Now, I don't separate them. If my life had been manageable, I sure as hell wouldn't have been powerless over alcohol, in my opinion. So I just put it all together, and that's the way it works. So I have no formal religion. It had to be a power greater than I was. When I got to the second step, it says a power greater than will restore you to sanity. The assumption there is you're a little flaky. I mean, you're not playing with a full deck or something like that, because it doesn't say if you were insane. It said restore you to sanity. So, as I say, I have no form of religion. It had to be a power greater than I was. So I started to look, and I didn't come here to find God. Didn't even know he was lost. But I used to go to church regularly, every Easter. Every Easter we'd go to church and hear the music, and not the same denomination, but wherever. But anyway, see, I said a lot of stuff is here. See, I don't know what the hell I've been talking about, but I got the second step, and I found out it was an inside job as far as I was concerned, that the power was here, and if I came to a meetings and it said someplace, I don't know if it's a big book or someplace, but this power was not given to the medical men, the theologians, the PhDs, or what, but was given to another alcoholic. So the best place to find a sober alcoholic is in an AA meeting. So I come here, and I get all the power from you people. Now, I don't know how I would do if I was a loner up on some island, but for me, I stay sober a lot on the fellowship. I did when I came in, I still do. I go to a lot of meetings. I must tell you about this group, though. It was probably the most unique group that I have ever seen before or after. As I say, it was a small group, and it was a rich group. They had donuts and barbecue and ham and cold cuts and you name it, and they had it. And they never had a starting time. They started to meet sometime after 7 o'clock, and they sat around and talked. And eventually somebody would say, why don't we start the meeting? They said, well, next guy comes in will be the leader. So next guy come up the steps, we'd say, you're the leader, and we'd have the meeting. And then we met on Friday. We had no closing time either. Everybody talked, see. Every meeting, everybody talked. Didn't matter how long you were there, everybody talked. And when we met on Friday, and we had a lot of Catholics. As I say, we had a lot of cold cuts and corned beef and ham and all that stuff. So if the meeting was run a little early, the Catholics had started talking. And they want to run it past midnight because the Protestants would eat up all the ham and corned beef. And nothing left but cheese. And then we played poker after the meeting. Played every Friday night. But you couldn't play poker unless you had been there to start the meeting. And you couldn't play poker unless you'd been sober 3 months. So a lot of guys stayed sober to play poker. And then after they played poker, they were sorry they hadn't got drunk because it was a sort of a unique poker game. We could play as many guys in the game as there were cards, see. I mean, we'd just make up the game as we go along. And new man there, he's studying. Gee, the time he looks up, see somebody had already dragged the pot in. But we did cut the pot for all this food and stuff we had. I wasn't kidding. We had everything to eat that you could think of. And we paid for all that and paid the rent because we always rented a place. This is a little later on. But, one more thing. See, if you're in a poker game, we always counted the dollar in the baskets. And if there weren't as many dollars as there were sitting around the poker game, we say, who didn't put in the basket? Come through, you can't play poker here if you didn't put $1 in the basket. So, because that money went downtown. We sent all the collection downtown. So that's the way I started, and it was we had no steering committee. We had one secretary. He was the secretary shortly after I got there, and after I came to California, he lost the job as secretary because he moved out of town, but he was secretary for about 25 years. They started a rotating committee down at the central office. They started in Chicago at Evanston, a guy by the name of Earl Treat, and they had this rotating committee. So they had us send down a man, delegate, and so we finally sent down a guy. And the meeting was in the Loop, and he went to the meeting, got drunk, and never made a report, and we haven't seen him since, but that was the last man we sent, so we were not involved with any. Went along, we sent our money down. The Chicago AA split in two because of some difficulty about paying some guy for a job, and wanted to take it out of the kitty, and one group said they wouldn't. And they were split down the middle for many, many years. They had they sent all their money to New York. They wouldn't support the Chicago office. When I want to get back, I ramble a lot because I don't have, I never have any notes or know what the hell I'm going to talk about. But I have to bring my wife into this. I introduced her, but they told me, as was suggested here by Frank, suggested maybe you should get the big book. And they didn't do like they say, see the secretary and he'll make arrangements. They said you get the book down to central office, which is down the Loop, and you get down there and buy it. They didn't say anything about financial arrangement. They just said get it. But anyway, I got the book, and it had a cover on it was unlike this. I mean, it had a yellow, and geez, you could spot it 2 miles away. So on the train, every time I'd see a guy with a book with a brown cover over the outside, I knew he was reading a big book when I'd see him going downtown, because everybody read in the train. But anyway, I got the book. This is where my wife comes in. And I took it home, and right away she took the book from me and started to read it. She was going to interpret it and tell me how to stay sober. I mean, she'd been so good at it up to this time. But anyway, she came to a chapter in there that said something about wives or something like this, and she said, gee, I see by this that I wasn't always right. You know, up to this time, I had a little doubt about this group I was in, but no longer, because my wife had many faults, but being wrong wasn't one of them, see? But anyway, she was a big help. This is serious. We drank every night at home. She drank beer and I drank whiskey. I tried to drink beer. Boy, I drank a few bottles after Prohibition was out. I tried to drink it during Prohibition. They'd say, oh, you should try this brew. And I'd taste it and Jesus, not for me. I drank everything else. Don't get me. I'll tell more about my wife, then I'll go back. I got to watch the time here. A lot of times I get talk about drinking, and people say, "Did you ever get to AA?" And I run out. But anyway, we drank. That is, when we were at home. Now, we didn't eat without drinking. She drank beer and I drank whiskey. And so I had heard these fellows talk, and I told her, I said, well, they say you can continue to drink. And she said, no. If I have to drink, I must have a problem. So my wife hasn't had a drink in 33 years. And that's been a big help to me. I don't know what I would have done if I had come home. I don't know, because it didn't happen. If I had come home every night and she had been drinking and I had to stay sober or not drink, I don't know what I'd have done. But I said it didn't happen. So I only know that I've had guys come on and they can't stay sober, and their wives have talked to me and they say, why can't he stay? They say, meet me, I want to talk to you. Why can't he stay? Why does he have to drink? All the time she's sitting there drinking a scotch and soda. And I said, why don't you quit? Well, I like to drink, she said. And I said, well, I guess he does too, so what the hell? No big deal. No big deal. So my wife has really been a big help to me. I was going to say, I drank everything. I worked in South Chicago during the Prohibition, and that's quite an ethnic neighborhood. Steel mills and everything are out there, and they have a lot of Polish people, and they made what they call, I just heard this the other night, a guy came from Chicago was talking about his drinking, but they call it Polak Yaki Dak. And it was made out of everything but garbage and Jesus, you name it, and that's what it was made out of, and they sold it. A lot of the guys that, I don't know of any of the guys that I worked with out there that ever got to AA. A lot of them died, but they never got to AA. But we used to have a truck driver that took orders, and he would take your order. I think it was $2 a gallon at that time. This is really during the Depression. And we'd give him the order, and he'd go home, make it, age it, and deliver it the next day, see? But I drank very little of that. But after Prohibition, I drank, and I tried to drink beer because I tried to control my drinks for a long time. And I didn't have any luck because it seemed like I'd drink a bottle of beer, and then I was all filled up. So I'd order another bottle, and then I would start drinking straight whiskey. I rarely drank mixed drinks. Oh, I drank them every place, but if I had my preference, I drank bourbon, bonded to start with, and a bottle of beer, and then for about 6 shots of booze, I'd drink 1 bottle of beer. And I still smoked cigars at that time. They call them Boilermaker and a Helper. And that was a shot of beer and a cigar. And that'll get you here real quick if you drink that way. But anyway, we've been very fortunate. I retired in 1962. And, well, one reason I retired kind of early because, well, in the first place, we lived on the golf course, and the property wasn't selling too fast because we lived was about 4 miles from the nearest town, and the real estate men wouldn't send anyone out there unless they thought it was a real good prospect. But I lived right on the fairway. And so I just stuck a sign in the front yard, didn't say anything about retiring. I figured it'd take a year to retire, to sell the house. 2 weeks later, a guy playing golf by me saw the sign, come in, bought the damn house. I had to go retire and make arrangements. They wanted to get in before school started, and so I retired and came. But the reason I did, prior to this, my wife had said, when I was drinking, she said, I can't understand, you work hard all the time, and you spend all your money on booze. And I'm not too sharp, but after a while I figured this out. I'm not drinking anymore. And what the hell do I need with dough? So I quit, see. I said, well, I quit work. As long as I don't need any money, I spend it all anyway. So I retired, and we came to California. I was going to go to Florida, but we had some cousins down at Rancho Santa Fe, and they told us about Leisure World. And so we came out here, and we bought in there. And this is before inflation. We've lived there 20 years now. And we were able to, I'm not bragging about this, but we were able to do a lot of traveling before inflation. We can't do it now because they priced us out of the market. But we were able to go, well, first we went to Hawaii, and then come back on the old Lurleen, if you remember that. And but we made all 4 islands over there, and of course, every island we went to, we went to AA meetings, or called AAs, and I know we were in Honolulu, the first time I'd ever been to Hawaii, and we had this group from Leisure World. We were the only AAs there, and we came back one night riding in this Cadillac convertible, top down, and so long, Jack, so long, Dee, so long. The other people there were sitting around in front of the hotel because they had nothing else to do. And they said, you must have been here before. And I said, no, first time here. And, well, how is it with that other island? You got on the phone and said hello, Susie, and somebody come and got you in the car. And I said, well, that's my personality, I guess, just so all over. But anyway, we were able to take several cruises. We went to Australia, New Zealand, and all the islands. This is on a cruise ship, which is the only way to go. And we went to meetings all over, and we saw a lot of things in both New Zealand and Australia that the rest of the tourists didn't see. Because we went to AA meetings, and they'd say, have you seen this bridge that goes from New Zealand over there, the Japs built? And so we'll take you over after the meeting. And so we'd go there, have you seen this? And the rest of them say, well, that's a tourist spot. Well, we haven't been. I was there last night, see. But, and that happens all over because then later on we went to Japan and on the Staten Dam, went to World's Fair. And next time we flew to London, took the ship back to, went to several meetings in London and came back through the canal and up through there. And what I'm trying to bring out, every place we went, either went to an AA meeting or called AA, and they just roll out the red carpet and make it home. One of the gentlemen's, that's the south side of Chicago, it says gentlemen's. From Portland. I was up to Portland one time, and I called a guy, and it was in the book, and he said, he came over, and he said, you know Bob D. from Long Beach? And I said, yeah. He says, he's my sponsor. And I said, hell yes, see. So anyway, we made arrangements to go to a meeting downtown Portland. I believe Saturday night they have a buffet or something down there. But he called. He said, I can't make it, but I got another guy to take you. And the guy called up and said, I don't know. My wife said, don't run this stuff around too long. But I think it's interesting. He said, I can't take you down because I got kids, but if you can go for beef stroganoff, if you'll come out to the house. And this guy was a disc jockey at Portland. But we got to talking. He was a graduate of the University of Illinois, and I said, I know a guy about your age down in Newport. Went to University of Illinois and graduated, and I told him his name was Phil P. And he said, is that son of a so-and-so on the program? I thought he was in Chicago. I said, no, he got drunk in Chicago. But so he wrote him a letter. Here they graduated together from, and I was the first speaker at the Sunday night meeting that they started in Lake Oswego, I believe it is. Oh, excuse me. Right outside of Portland. He said, we'd like to have a meeting the same as East Bay here. We don't have one. Could you stay over Sunday? And I said, to speak, I'll stay over any length of time you want. So they started the meeting. I don't know if it's still there or not. I'm running out of time now. I probably run. I didn't tell you too much. I had a little poem that I've been reading for 20-some years. I saw it in the Lifeline a couple months ago. I didn't give it to him, but I think it was written by an AA, but I'm sure that it was written more than 25 years ago because I've had it. Different people, I know it's been written by an AA, nobody else could write it, but somebody said couplet Riverside, but whoever has written the poem must have been on AA, and I don't know who it was, and I'll give them credit for it. And if you saw the Lifeline, as I say, a couple of months ago, you probably read the poem. But my wife likes to hear me read it. She says I do it so well. And so I'm going to read it tonight and shut up in case we got anything else, and then I'll remember what I really was going to talk about when I came here. I can't think of anything that I missed. She'll tell me about it later. But I never like to run over time if I can help it. As I say, if you read this, I'm sure our visiting people from out maybe have never heard this. I read it on a sober sailor's ship one time, and the gal behind me was going to say it. She knew it by heart. Then it developed that I gave her the poem 7 years ago at Las Vegas. She reminded me of it, but so I don't know. I'll read it to you. It's entitled How It Works. It says, utter confusion, misery and pain, humiliation, remorseful, ashamed, dreading to face the light of each day, not wanting to hear what people would say, like, Where's your willpower? Where is your pride? They don't understand that down deep inside, I wished I knew the answers to give and how to find the courage to live. I'd taken the pills they told me I should. I tried all the cures, but they did no good. I made many promises, meant them too, but the compulsion to drink is stronger than you. One day a friend happened to say, I know the answer. I can show you a way. All it takes is an open mind. Believe what you hear from your own kind. I went to a meeting. They read chapter 5. The steps made some sense, and hope was revived. I saw living proof of what faith can do. It worked for them. Why not for you? One day at a time, they told me to live. They said, easy does it, and learn to forgive. Be humble, be honest, and help when you can. Pass on what you learn to a new man. I heard them repeat the serenity prayer, and soon realized all my answers were there. Now when someone asks, can miracles be? May I always reply, take a look at me.